Hello, I'm Shane Geisler with KPOL and Contact Mission. A recent survey says that 3 in 10 Americans consider themselves religiously unaffiliated. This demographic includes both people who are unsure about God's existence and those who deny the supernatural altogether. As recently as 2007, this religiously unaffiliated group was vastly outnumbered by Christians by about 5 to 1. Now, just a decade later, Christians only outnumber the non-religious approximately 2 to 1. So the question is, why have so many people moved from theism to rejecting the supernatural realm? Metaphysical naturalism and the new atheism reduce religion to a fairy tale. Allegedly, God is a man-made convention designed to comfort those who are unable to accept reality. The assumption is that the evidence does not lead to supernaturalism. Believers may respond in several different ways. One approach involves citing miraculous evidence as an argument for the existence of God. Recently, Christian apologists have produced works on tangible evidence for miracles. For example, Dr. Craig Keener has written over 1,500 pages on the legitimacy of the miraculous claims. He records eyewitness testimony of things that defy natural explanation. He shares testimonies of healings supplemented by medical documentation. Time and again, individuals with serious medical conditions appeal to a higher power and experience the sudden remission of their condition. But even evidence such as this remains largely unacknowledged in secular circles. Skeptics often dismiss the data entirely, attributing it to superstition or confirmation bias. They argue that people see what they already believe. They ascribe the experiences to psychological phenomena and otherwise natural events. Skeptics insist that religious people are inclined to exaggerate and embellish events. But what if there was a concrete body of evidence for the supernatural, observable from a neutral perspective? Everybody would like to witness a miraculous event. Anyone given the choice would like to experience God's favor on their life. But how many people actively seek out a confrontation with supernatural evil? Who frequently pursues confrontation with the demonic? And what does academia say about such endeavors? Cynics may still assert that such a belief in evil beings is motivated by bias, but it must be acknowledged that there is far less reason for the average person to want these entities to be real. So where's the middle ground? We need to move forward in a way that is both critical, yet follows the evidence. We can start by asking if there is any evidence for the existence of these malevolent, supernatural beings. If so, this may not exclusively prove the existence of God, but it would certainly open a door to that possibility. Demonic activity is better explained by theism rather than atheism or metaphysical naturalism. One of the most common objections to the existence of demons states that cases of alleged possession are really just symptoms of mental illness. Dr. Richard Gallagher is a medical doctor and board-certified psychiatrist. He completed his residency at Yale and currently teaches at Columbia University. He is as qualified as anyone to diagnose mental illness. He began his study into the demonic as a skeptic. He explains his approach to this sensitive matter when he says, quote, "The criteria for discerning spirit possession are quite strict and based on the recognition of a genuine syndrome, whose features are as exacting as any other medical diagnosis. I've worked hard to develop a system of investigation based on my psychiatric training and experience. I ask one basic question: do the patient's symptoms have a natural or scientific explanation? I may begin to answer this question as need be through a physical exam and standard rounds of medical tests, such as blood work to search for chemical abnormalities. I may schedule a brain scan or an EEG." End quote. He explains in his book how he rules out all other possible explanations before considering the possibility of possession. He notes that of the 25,000 patients he has seen in his professional career, not a single one was possessed. His only experience with truly possessed individuals have come through referrals who sought out his expertise. He goes on to say, quote, "In modern times, especially in the developed world, Many people think the possessed are just mentally ill. There's a real difference. As I often say to people, mentally ill people can't all of a sudden speak foreign languages. They don't exhibit levitation. They don't have superhuman strength. All of these symptoms are a good indication that there is a separate creature involved." End quote. It's one thing to see someone with symptoms of mental illness and lazily impute the actions as workings of a demon. It's an entirely different situation when the phenomena in question exceed natural explanation. As a distinguished psychiatrist, Dr. Gallagher and 7 others claim to have witnessed an individual levitate for half an hour. Here's where we must make a key distinction. Some stories can be reasonably attributed to mental illness. However, this is not one of those cases. While anything is possible, it is highly unlikely that 8 adults were simultaneously mistaken in identifying a case of levitation. So, what is the more likely explanation? On one hand, all 8 of these individuals may have conspired to create an entirely fictional narrative. On the other hand, these people may have witnessed a truly supernatural event. Another example from 2014 was of a mother suspecting demonic activity in her house. A 36-year police department veteran arrived on the scene. He noted that he thought this was a desperate attempt on behalf of the mother to draw attention and make some quick cash. After several visits to the allegedly haunted home, he said, quote, "I am a believer," end quote. The distinctly supernatural events began when the mother of 3 recalled being awakened in the night to one of her children levitating above the bed. But surely one individual can invent a story such as this, right? The mother of 3 and the children's grandmother sought out the help of their local physician. Medical staff witnessed one of the boys being lifted and thrown into a wall without anyone touching him. The Indiana Department of Child Services was contacted to perform their own investigation. The mother was given a psychological evaluation and found to be of sound mind. The report from the Indiana Department of Child Services records a nurse on scene witnessing one of the children walk backward up the wall to the ceiling. Here we have a case which includes the testimony of a mother, a grandmother, medical staff, Department of Child Services staff, and a detailed police report, each individually corroborating the uniquely supernatural findings. Were they each simply mistaken? Did they all collaborate to conjure up this grand fairy tale? Or is this an account of a genuinely supernatural encounter? Bill Ellis is a professor at Penn State University. Ouija boards are tools by which users are thought to be able to interact with spiritual beings. He cites 2 cases in which Ouija boards were used to spell meaningful messages while the users were blindfolded and the letters randomized. Dr. Craig T. Isaac, another licensed clinical psychologist, says, quote, "Though belief in possession has been rejected as superstition, the phenomenon of demonic possession is a psychic fact and necessarily should be approached as such. The way to distinguish these mental illnesses from demonic activity will be by viewing the whole spectrum of symptoms exhibited. What we have found is that demonic possession is a unique syndrome comprised of signs and symptoms that are different from the signs and symptoms that constitute any of the psychotic syndromes." End quote. John Mevius was a missionary in the late 1800s. He recorded eyewitness testimony of demonic activity from India, Germany, Japan, and remote regions of China. He made note of the distinctly supernatural nature of the happenings. Furthermore, he highlights parallels among testimonies from various peoples who, A, had no way of connecting with one another, and B, had not been influenced by Western Christianity. Furthermore, there are hours of content circulating on the internet of first-hand testimonies from priests who have been formally commissioned by the Catholic Church to fill the role of exorcists. You'll have to be the judge of their stories for yourself as they go about describing first-hand experiences with distinctly supernatural powers demonstrated by the possessed individuals. Lastly, A 2015 survey states that approximately 1 in 5 US adults claim to have seen or been in the presence of a ghost. The term ghost may bring to mind harmless, sometimes friendly beings, as pop culture and entertainment may lead one to believe. Nevertheless, if this study is correct, upwards of 50 million Americans can testify to these supernatural encounters with spiritual beings. Are some of these accounts embellished or mistaken? Almost certainly. However, one can quickly stumble from a position of sober criticism into a close-minded cynicism when eager to dismiss the testimonies of 50+ million individuals simply on the basis of a materialistic worldview. It really can't be overstated. No single piece of evidence is likely to change one's mind about the existence of the supernatural realm. However, I hope you've gained an appreciation for the type of evidence we are dealing with. It can't all be dismissed as simple misunderstandings. You must examine the evidence for yourself. As you go about doing your own research, keep in mind this quote from the famed author and Christian apologist C.S. Lewis, who said, quote, "There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight." End quote. Again, I'm Shane Geisler with K-Paul and Contact Mission.